So good to see you this morning. I want to talk this morning, excuse me, about my favorite metaphor because it really, when it comes to this practice, because it really encompasses so much of what we talk about. You'll often hear me refer to drop the rope, which refers to our tendency to get entangled in trying to change situations over which we have no control. Yet we keep the tug of war going. We keep pulling on the rope. And it's just a shorthand phrase that I try to use a lot in my daily life to avoid the suffering that comes with getting entangled in all these circumstances that we so often talk about. So, we think about um, drop the rope. Um, this tug of war is a metaphor for the struggles we face daily. And that could be with our relationships, it could be with our goals, it could be with our inner conflicts. The list goes on and on. We often find ourselves locked in battles, clinging tightly to our desires, our wounds, our old grudges, our opinions, our expectations. The list goes on and on. So, as the metaphor suggests, what if instead of pulling with all our strength, engaging in these constant tug of wars, we just simply let go of the rope? This concept of dropping the rope is a powerful metaphor for many, many aspects of our Buddhist path. And what it really speaks to is this practice of non attachment and letting go, of acceptance. It invites us to release our grip on the things we're struggling with. Now, easier said than done. And it's because that stuff shows up all over the place. And that could be a disagreement with a loved one. It could be a fear of failure. It could be a craving for something we desire. It could be a wish for something we don't like to go away, on and on and on. But what happens when we drop the rope is we give up and relinquish our control, wish for control, our need to control the outcome. We acknowledge that we can't control it and it's just causing suffering if we continue to try to do so. We surrender to the flow of life. We trust that whatever happens is in it, when we drop the rope, will reduce our suffering because we're letting go of the struggle. We let go of this burden of resistance. We open ourselves to the possibility of true acceptance. Now, dropping the rope doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean we be passive. It's not about abandoning our responsibilities, ignoring our problems, but it is about approaching life with a sense of ease and grace, with a sense of equanimity, responding to our challenges with mindfulness and with equanimity. In other words, dropping the rope is an intentional and active process. Okay. So when we drop the rope in our relationships with others, we let go of the need to be right all the time or to change the other person, something that's usually just a hopeless endeavor. And what we do instead is we cultivate empathy and understanding, seeking to connect with them and understand them on a deeper level, to hear them, to be open to their point of view, to not have to win every argument and have the last word, which is something that I've suffered from my entire life. Um, so when we drop the rope in our pursuits, we let go of this pressure, this internal pressure to succeed at everything, to achieve a specific outcome, which we have defined. Instead, we focus on the journey itself, embracing the process with curiosity and with gratitude, indeed. We're grateful for the relief of our suffering. And when we drop the rope in our inner conflicts, this is really a big one because we let go of the stories that we're telling ourselves. The stories often involve a tug of war because we're not meeting expectations, the judgments we place on ourselves, the attachments we cling to. And what do we do instead? We embrace ourselves with compassion, with no judgment, with forgiveness, and recognizing our inherent worthiness and resilience. And boy, does the resilience grow when we can drop the rope. So in essence, to boil it down, dropping the rope is an invitation to surrender to the present moment as it is, not as we wish it to be. Okay. Drop the rope is an invitation to surrender to the present moment, to accept things as they are, not as we wish they were. That is a huge source of reduced suffering. We let go of the struggle. We just embrace the flow of life as it unfolds. Because it's a reminder that true freedom comes from not holding on tightly to anything, an idea, a relationship, a story, a person, an outcome. Freedom comes from letting all that go. Freedom comes from releasing our grip and allowing ourselves to just be in the flow of the currents of existence, just as things unfold. So when we find ourselves locked in this tug of war with life and all its circumstances, we need to remind ourselves the power and the freedom that comes with dropping the rope. I try to carry this metaphor around in my head all the time because it is so freeing when I can remember to do it. And I wish I could do it more. Speaking of dropping the rope, we release our grasp, we soften our resistance, and we surrender to the moment. And when we do that, this is the beauty of it, because and you know this from experience, we touch into the peace and liberation that we really want in our lives, that we really seek in our lives. So recently, as I was preparing my thoughts for today, I was reminded of a situation where recently I was feeling misunderstood, I was feeling hurt, I was feeling mistreated. I was taking a situation very personally. And the reality is that I think I was mistreated. I mean, others confirmed from what they knew of the situation. But be that as it may, I quickly regressed into me, poor me, my ego, poor Jeff. And I was ruminating about it, going round and round, just closed loop in my head. And all that did was cut me off, isolate me from those around me, made me feel miserable, made me feel sorry for myself. Woe is me. And after a while, too long actually, I remembered about dropping the rope. When I could step outside for just a moment from my self pity. And I went to the body, as I often talk about, and to see where I was holding that hurt. Where was it? Where was it in the body? And it was right here in my midriff, right here in my chest. And it literally was a physical pain. I mean, this. You know that psychological pain it can manifest physically because the same brain region lights up whether the pain is physical or emotional. We are in pain. So I just sat with the hurt. I just acknowledged it. I sat with it. I breathed into it. I breathed into my suffering. I slowed my breath. I recognized this old pattern, this lifelong pattern of getting my feelings hurt. And I embraced the vulnerability rather than trying to push it away, rather than trying to run from it. And in other words, I dropped the rope. I realized what a role my pride was playing in my suffering. My ego was playing in my suffering. And I invoked some self-compassion, not pity, not self-pity. Tried to move away from that, but self-compassion for the hurt. And after a few minutes of sitting with it, consciously choosing to engage with my hurt and my resentment, I could finally drop the rope. And I have to tell you, I immediately felt a lightening of the load. I immediately felt better. I could just feel a shift internally, a shift mentally. I got up and went about my business. It's why when we set an intention to drop the rope with our internal dramas, our external dramas, our struggles with others, our struggles with ourselves, our suffering reduces. I promise this is true. It's a metaphor which encompasses so many aspects of our path. So let me leave you with the thought that when you find yourself caught up in some struggle that's causing you suffering, just remind yourself to do whatever you need to do to drop the rope, because as I just related, it can really make a difference in our suffering. So let me stop it there.